Let's take a journey together to one of the most significant and fateful moments in world history, the year 1453 AD. A year a city fell and the world changed forever. This is the story of the fall of Constantinople, an event that ended a 1,000-year empire and marked a major turning point in history. To understand the depth of this event, we must go back a few years to around 1450. The Byzantine Empire, also known as the Eastern Roman Empire, which once ruled over a vast part of the world, was now just a shadow of its former glory. Of all its territories, only the great city of Constantinople itself remained, along with a few scattered pieces of land around it. The empire was incredibly weak and on its deathbed. Directly opposite this declining giant, a young, energetic, and ambitious power was rising, the Ottoman Empire. In 1451, a 19-year-old named Sultan Mehmed II ascended to the throne. Many in Europe underestimated him because of his youth, thinking he was inexperienced, but his dreams and ambitions were far greater than they could imagine. Why was this young man so determined to take this city? His reasons were a powerful combination of personal, strategic, and religious motives. Personal and legacy motivation. A Greek historian named Critoboulos, who was in the Ottoman court, wrote that Mehmed II's goal was the conquest of Constantinople from day one. In his speeches to his soldiers, he constantly spoke of his father's legacy and considered the capture of the city a historic and divine duty. Strategic importance. Constantinople was like a thorn in the throat of the Ottoman Empire. The city separated the empire's European and Asian territories. Control of the city, and especially the strategic Bosphorus Strait, was vital for the unity and power of the empire. Religious and historical significance. Muslims had dreamed of conquering this city for centuries. Major sieges had been carried out in the 7th and 8th centuries during the Umayyad era, all of which had failed. Therefore, capturing the city carried an immense symbolic and religious weight and was considered a great victory for the entire Islamic world. Sultan Mehmed wasted no time and began preparations for the attack with all his might. The Throat Cutter Fortress. One of his first and most brilliant moves was the construction of the famous Rumeli Hisari, Rumelian Castle, on the European side of the Bosphorus Strait, directly opposite the older Anadolu Hisari, Anatolian Castle, on the Asian side. The construction of this fortress was completed in 1452. The Ottomans called these two fortresses Boğazkesen, which means throat cutter or strait blocker. With this, they effectively seized complete control of the Bosphorus. To make their point clear, when a Venetian ship ignored their warnings, they sank it with a cannonball and executed its crew. The message was unmistakable. The era of Byzantine control over the strait was over. The giant cannons, the secret weapon. But the Ottomans' main trump card was their terrifying artillery. The story of a Hungarian engineer named Orban is crucial here. Orban first offered his services to build massive cannons to the Byzantine Emperor, Constantine XI, but the empire was so poor it couldn't afford them. Sultan Mehmed immediately seized the opportunity. He knew that to break the massive, multi-layered walls of Constantinople, he needed such a weapon. One of Orban's main cannons, known as the Basilica, was so heavy that it required 60 oxen and over 400 men to transport it from Edirne, the Ottoman capital at the time, to the walls of Constantinople. Of course, Ottoman engineers like Sarıkaya Pasha also built large cannons, and together they assembled an unparalleled artillery force. Now let's go to the other side of the walls. Emperor Constantine XI was in a desperate situation, seeking help from the Pope, Venice, Genoa, and other European powers, but the aid was minimal. Religious disputes between the Eastern and Western churches and the commercial interests of powers like Venice meant that Byzantium was left alone in its final hour. However, there were heroes. The most important of them was Giovanni Giustiniani Longo, a brave military commander from Genoa who arrived in the city with about 700 professional and volunteer soldiers. He was so capable and effective that Constantine entrusted him with the overall command of the defense of the land walls. Another key figure was John Grant, a Scottish expert in underground warfare and countermining, whose role would later prove vital. An unequal battle. The disparity in numbers was shocking. The city's defenders numbered around 7,000 to 8,000 men, including Byzantine soldiers, foreign volunteers, and armed citizens. In contrast, the Ottoman army is estimated to have been between 80,000 and even 300,000 strong. However, nearly all historians agree that the Ottomans' numerical superiority was at least 10 to 1. The siege began, and a war of wits and endurance unfolded. Bombardment and repair. The main Ottoman tactic was the relentless round-the-clock bombardment of the legendary Theodosian walls with their giant cannons. But the defenders, with incredible speed and skill, repaired the walls every night under the scattered fire of the cannons, using whatever they could find: stones, wood, earth, and barrels. Underground warfare. The Ottomans tried to dig tunnels under the walls, but this is where John Grant's genius came into play. He would place bowls of water on the ground, and through the vibrations in the water, he could detect the location of the digging tunnels. They would then either dig counter-tunnels and engage the enemy, suffocate them with smoke, or use the terrifying Byzantine secret weapon, Greek fire, an incendiary substance that burned even on water. The Great Chain of the Golden Horn. The Byzantines had a massive chain stretched across the mouth of the Golden Horn, the city's natural harbor, preventing the Ottoman navy from entering and attacking the city's weaker seawalls from that side. The Ottoman navy was stuck behind this chain. But here, Mehmed II did something no one could have ever imagined. He ordered their warships to be transported overland. Thousands of wooden logs were laid on the ground, and their surface was heavily greased with animal fat. Then, with the force of thousands of soldiers and oxen, they dragged about 70 ships over the hills, past the Genoese Tower of Galata, and into the Golden Horn. It is said that this entire extraordinary feat was accomplished in a single night. The effect of this move was devastating. The defenders woke up in the morning to find their secure harbor filled with enemy ships. Now they had to defend a new front, and their morale was severely weakened. May 29, 1453, the final assault. After about 50 days of siege, Mehmed II decided to launch the final all-out assault. The night before, the entire Ottoman camp was lit with torches, and the sound of drums and trumpets struck terror into the hearts of the defenders. The attack was designed in 3 waves. 1. The first wave, irregular forces or Bashi bazooks, who were sent in only to exhaust the defenders. 2. The second wave, regular, well-trained Anatolian and Rumelian soldiers who multiplied the pressure. 3. The third wave, the elite, special, and fresh forces of the Janissaries. This professional infantry, who had rested until that moment, entered the fray under the personal command of Sultan Mehmed for the final blow. The defenders had been fighting non-stop for hours. They were tired, wounded, and dwindling in number. They were still resisting under the command of Giustiniani until 2 key events turned the tide. 1. The wounding of Giustiniani. Giustiniani, who was fighting like a lion, was severely wounded and had to be carried away from the front line for medical treatment. The sight of their brave commander retreating shattered the morale of the defenders, who were already at their breaking point. 2. The unlocked Kirkoporta Gate. At almost the same time, a small group of about 50 Ottoman soldiers accidentally discovered a small secondary gate called the Kirkoporta, which had been left unlocked in the chaos of battle. They poured through it, made their way to the top of the wall, and raised the Ottoman flag. Seeing the enemy's flag flying above the wall was the final blow. The defenders thought all was lost, and organized resistance completely collapsed. Emperor Constantine XI, seeing the city was falling, refused the offer to escape. Famously saying, "The city falls and I fall with it," he cast off his royal insignia to be unrecognized and fought as a common soldier, dying in the battle. His body was never definitively identified. After the conquest, as was the custom of the time, the city was subjected to 3 days of plunder. Accounts of these 3 days vary. Western sources like Niccolo Barbaro and Ducas speak of horrific slaughter and devastation. However, after 3 days, Sultan Mehmed ordered a complete halt to the pillaging and granted amnesty to the remaining Christians. He wanted the city to be revived, not to remain a ruin. Upon entering the city, the Sultan went directly to the great cathedral of Hagia Sophia. He was amazed by the grandeur of the building and immediately ordered it to be cleansed and converted into a mosque. An interesting note, the city's name didn't change to Istanbul right away. For nearly 500 years, the official name of the city remained Constantinople. Istanbul was a colloquial name used by the people, derived from the Greek phrase Istin Polin, to the city, and it finally became official in 1930. And so, the conquest of Constantinople brought an end to the 1,000-year Byzantine Empire, established the Ottoman Empire as a world power, and changed history forever. This city, with all its historical layers, Byzantine, Roman, Ottoman, and Turkish, still whispers the story of that great day in its streets.